Hello and welcome. I'm Luce, and tonight is a very special night. Now that 2024 has ended, it is time for my yearly ranking of all the games I played in 2024, the previous year. Now, this is my first time doing an OBS instead of my usual Twitch Studio since Twitch Studio was retired last year, so this will be my first time working with the OBS system, so that's gonna be fun. Now the rules are on screen. It has to cover games that I specifically streamed in 2024. If there's any problems, like if something turns out a game started at the end of 2023 and went into 2024, I only count it if it started in 2024. And this time, I'm actually going to be ranking my replayed games as well. I'm not doing them together for reasons that will become obvious very soon. Well, I guess I can even say it right now. It's because some of the games I replayed were very, very important to me growing up, and so it's a bit unfair for new ones to have to deal with that sort of thing, in my opinion. And as per usual, I'm just ranking them directly towards one another. Like, as I go down the list, I'm going to add them to the list one by one and see where they rank in there. I don't intentionally go out of my way to suffer a terrible game or whatever, but this is supposed to be more how they rank more relative to one another, not directly which are good and which are bad, just I like this one more than this one, or I think this one worked better, that sort of thing. Alright, Ty, welcome. When each game comes up, I'm going to be discussing it and my thoughts on it, reflecting a bit, especially since I'm the kind of person where my opinion needs time to settle before I can really be thorough with it, so this is a nice time to do that. And of course, I will be spoilers abound because I have to discuss pretty much everything about each one that comes up, so be warned. Let's see here. I'll try and get a bit of music behind each one, but I have to basically just play a YouTube in the background, so be warned there. Especially since I'm going to hope I don't accidentally get hit by one of those copyright notices, but we'll see. I've been smacked by a few of those. Alright, so first things first, let me go down the list. The first game that I streamed in 2024 that was there's gonna be for the old list because the first one on January 2nd was Lethal Company with my stream team. Lethal Company, there is a few songs tied to there, but I'm just gonna put some Deus Ex music in the background while I discuss it. Alright, Versa Life. Alright, let's not make it too loud so it doesn't overpower me. Alright, so... Oh, right. Alright, so I should also edit this real quick here since there's nothing to compare them to yet. Lethal Company was definitely one of the surprises when it came out in 2023, and for whatever it's worth, I did enjoy playing through in 2024 as well. The updates are pretty hit or miss, but to be fair, that's kind of expected. Like, 2024 was when they introduced the company Cruiser, which is I would personally say is both the best and worst update the game has ever had. Because on one hand, you can actually have fun running over enemies with it or using it to carry supplies, but on the other, it outright explodes pretty easily. So, it's both a huge help and a huge hindrance. And that kind of works well because Lethal Company that's kind of how Lethal Company works. There's a lot of give and take with a lot about it. Not all of them were favorites though. Like, I did enjoy the enemy that tries to grab you and lift you up. So if you get too many, you could get lifted to a ceiling fan or so high that you fall and die. That's funny and with ways to counterplay, but others I'm not I was not quite as enthused about. Like, the Kidnapper Fox was ridiculously powerful for killing people in the what's it called? In the ship, even if they're not actively grabbing things there, so. And while I get the person on the ship needs to have some level of wit, it was almost impossible to stop the grass they live and hide in from spreading faster than you can control it, especially since the weed killer doesn't actually work. Yeah, it was a lot of give and take there. Or you can definitely tell that the creator is basically adding whatever seems like a good idea at the time, but I guess that's kind of the nice thing about an indie game like that. You get a clear purity of vision, which doesn't always work out, but at the same time, you can tell it's made by a flawed person with a vision in mind. And of course, the fact that it's so easily moddable has a lot going on with it, but that's more the thing with the fan base than anything. Yeah, I genuinely did like Lethal Company. Yeah, I have asked, sometimes when we're between games, I have asked the team if we're going through it, but the way we work with that is we only go with a game that all three of us agree on, because it's just, even if just 2 people outvote the last one, we want something we all will have fun with, so sometimes I'm not feeling Lethal Company, sometimes one of the others isn't, and that's just how it goes. And as does with any of the other stuff we played, by the way, so... So yeah, Lethal Company, a good start to the year, I'd say. A lot of back and forth with the updates, but I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. Alrighty, what's next on the list? After Lethal Company is, let's see here, Vampire Survivors. Alrighty, here we are. Let me change the current discussed game, because we're going to be talking about Vampire Survivors next. This is another replay. Alrighty, so I should be able to use this one for Bloody Tears. I have to turn that down, because that was a really good one. Yeah, Vampire Survivors... That would have had a very good amount of strong DLC the whole time. I didn't play the Contra one, but I did get Ode to Castlevania, and boy, they went all out on that. Even so, there were some others like the Dark Osso update, which added as well as the Railroad one. So there was some decent amount of free updates as well, which is always nice, of course. But yeah, the Ode to Castlevania DLC was definitely the big highlight of this. Simply because, well, they managed to collab with their own inspiration in there. And while I'm a fake gamer who has not played nearly as many Castlevania games I'd like, I still recognized enough that I could enjoy a lot of it. Although I admit I did have to speak with some friends to get the full details. Hence, like, I knew Soma was the reincarnation of Dracula for his games, and that there was a rough timeline going on, but I didn't know some things like Sonia Belmont I didn't realize was from an installment that was rendered non-canon at one point, and that she hadn't shown up for quite some time before now. What? And of course, that ending. Dang, even though the DLC is not over yet, the end of the story felt like it could have been the end, because the vampire chooses Dracula and... I'm losing my train of thought. Well, this is entirely off the cuff and not scripted, so stuff like this happens, I suppose. But yeah, it could have been the end, because we finally meet a vampire, and he decides, you know what? No, I'm gonna join you. You can't kill me if I'm on your team. But we still get a huge threat to fight in the end. One that the director ends up sacrificing himself to save us from, causing everyone to work together, both from the game and Castlevania, in order to finally win. Oh, it's a beautiful scene, and I didn't even realize it went even deeper than I thought, because I didn't know about the Black Disc scene from Symphony of the Night. Because, I didn't play Symphony of the Night on the PlayStation, and we'll just leave it at that. So that was, definitely really amazing stuff, and, let's see here. I guess, yeah, it's definitely gonna go above Lethal Company. Alright, there we are. Because it definitely deserves to be up here. Well, Lethal Company definitely had a lot of back and forth, which was kind of neat in its own ways. I can't sit here and say Vampire Survivors wasn't just straight up grade for a lot of stuff. Only thing is because it added so much that will kind of mess with the pool of droppable items, but then again, that's also why they added so many seals so that you can control it a bit. And some might even appreciate the sheer number of potential items you can get rather than having assured, okay, I just have to wait for this to show up eventually. So there's definitely a lot more layers added to it. And that's really good stuff. Suppose they're still apparently working on some updates, so I am curious where they're going from now on, but it's also definitely a game that I'm going to remain in my list of stuff I might stream or play on my own just because I'm in the mood for it. Because it is really great for easily picking up and putting down without having to worry about anything else. And that's the kind of game I can really appreciate having in. Oh yeah, and the Among Us collab was hilarious as well. Although I think that was late last year. Or late 2023, not 2024. But yeah, I did like... Yeah, a silly one, but hey, the game is just vaguely Castlevania inspired. It wasn't afraid to have some fun. So I wasn't as bothered with that, but I can understand why some don't care for it. I guess that'll be all for the moment. And next game on the list. Alright, another game to replay. Looks like, oh, looks like I spent most of the January replaying some stuff before I got started on the new one. I guess in that aspect, I must have been a bit indecisive as to what to play at the time, which honestly makes sense. I'm definitely one of those people where I get decision paralysis and end up not making any decisions. Alright, so the next one is Age of Wonders 4, where I tried out the Dragon DLC, which was new at the actually, I think it was a bit... it wasn't even the newest DLC at the time. I've been diving in and out of Age of Wonders 4, but... Oh, right, I gotta update this. I'm gonna be honest, one of the things I really liked about Twitch Studio is when you edit text like this, you could just edit in the window directly. Here, you have to open up a whole other window and go through some stuff. Yeah, Age of Wonders 4 is definitely a game I wish I had done more of, but I was at least able to... Because it looks like I only did a bit at the start of the year, and then a bit at the end, and then nothing in between, which is honestly a shame. It's a genuinely fun game from a series that's always been rather close to my heart. So... Alright, let me, I'll use some Age of Wonders 1 music here, so... There we are. Alright, March the Halfling should be a good one. Yeah. Now, I am not a fan of battle passes, and even for a game I genuinely like Age of Wonders 4, I am not a fan, but at the same time, I do get the idea. Plus, it allows them to add a lot more of the game than they could before, especially since they used it to expand a bit more on the lore a bit as well. I think I mentioned, but I've always been following the story of Age of Wonders, and I genuinely think it's a pretty good one. You can also tell that it was a bit experimental early on, whereas the first game was very heavy Tolkien-inspired. And by that I mean sometimes it's just Tolkien with a serial numbers filed off, such as the point where if you join the elves, you have to help them escape to Evermore. And the dwarves, you open the mines of Moria and stuff like that. But it slowly got its own identity, and I think it's gotten it by this point. They even brought back some of the stuff from previous games like the Sirens and the Shadow Realm, which they renamed to the Umbral Realm. I guess it makes sense. It was a bit of a generic name before, but the in-game text does in fact confirm. Yeah, it was used to be called the Shadow Realm, but it's the Umbral world. I still have to do, as of the time of streaming this, I still have to do another one of the story missions for one of the expansions, and I'm definitely going to be getting around to that, but yeah. Yeah, I remember playing the demo disc for Age of Wonders 1 when I was a kid. It only had like 2 maps, and yet I played them for ages on end. And when the game finally came out, I played the heck out of that. From there on, I just kind of just followed the series all the way through. And it was directly noted that Julia, one of the main characters since the first game, had mysteriously vanished in 4. Her brother Meondor showed up after taking a break. He wasn't in 3, but he was in 1 and 2. So, I'm wondering if maybe the final one will bring her back and explain where she's been. Still, they've done a lot with Sundra, and I'm glad they did a lot more with her than just the vanilla games and the story continues ending, which was at the Grixalis, or whatever, how to pronounce it. So now, and they've expanded on it rather well, I think. As for where it ranks here, this is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to separate the replay games versus the new games, because the replays have a lot of rough competition. Because I do genuinely like Lethal Company, and I do love Vampire Survivors, but Age of Wonders 4 is just a very special game. Although I suppose if I need to be realistic and go, well, I've actually played this one a lot more, I probably do have to put Vampire Survivors slightly above it. Feels a bit awkward to put it there, but at the same time, though, maybe it's not entirely fair to do it this way when I played a lot more of both Lethal Company and Vampire Survivors. But, well, who knows? I might change my mind as we go along, because these are all just supposed to be rating the games directly against one another, rather than just trying to mark good and bad, like I said. It's just a lot easier for me to do that, because and they added another Battle Pass worth of updates as well, which I feel iffy on, but at the same time, I do like the game, and I do like the idea that it's getting more content stuff, and I mean beyond just the player content, because it still has player or generated stuff. Plus, it even put a lot more effort in this installment to allow you to feel like it's actually your leader participating in the story, as opposed to playing as the established characters. And there's definitely some appeal to that, as much as I did like the more linear version of the... Linear? Is that the right word? Just playing as the main characters, and even as from 1 through 3, playing as a main character and following their shoes, I did enjoy, but it's kind of neat they decided to experiment with having you have your own character in the story like that. Alrighty, what's next on the list? Streets of Rogue. Alrighty, Streets of Rogue then. Let me just adjust this real quick. Like I said, this is a lot easier with Twitch Studio, but that's been shut down, so gotta make do. Right, edit this one here. I see it still shows up as I type it though, and it's nice there. And what's the music to put on? Here we are. Mayor's Living. Here. Streets of Rogue. I've played quite a few of the roguish type games over the years, but this one is still by far one of my favorites. There's a reason this one and Vampire Survivors are the ones I keep coming back to whenever I'm bored and wish to just do something without feeling like I need to make a big commitment to it. And unfortunately, Streets of Rogue 2 has been delayed pretty heavily, but the demo was out, and it's got a lot of new stuff, from vehicles to housing and stuff that I am genuinely interested in showing off, but I figure I should wait until it's actually out before I stream it, you know? I'm not sure how to put into words what makes it appeal to me and how it's stuck with me all these years, but It really does deserve a lot more love than it's getting here. Right, I need to put it here on the list somewhere. I should probably start making new characters or something as well. I have to think about it. If you go on my VODs, I actually have done some player-created content with the game as well, so... Here's hoping Streets of Rogue 2 gets some pretty good stuff, as good to get pretty good attention and player-created content there as well. I guess it makes most sense to put it here. It's really rough, though. Vampire Survivors really deserves to be really high up, but... Well, like I said, I've been at 100% completion for Streets of Rogue for ages. All achievements, all characters with all their big quests complete. And yet I still frequently feel like coming back. In fact, I even did a few multiplayer runs with Slade earlier in the year. Pretty nice. It's also one I pitched to the team, but it's not really Jasper's cup of tea. We don't want to force him if he doesn't like it, so just had a couple with him. With Slade whenever Jasper wasn't around. I suppose this is the point where I'd put my finger above my mouth and be all shh. Ah well. Right. Now let's see. Those are probably going to cover most of the year, so let me take a look through here. Let's see here. Ah, Fate Grand Order's next. Alrighty. Now let's see here. Alright, Fate. I need to change this one here. Now let's see here. Fate Grand Order. Now, there's a good amount of things in Fate Grand Order I streamed during the year, including just one night of just purely farming a raid boss while I shot the breeze, or basically talked about anything that came to mind. But I'm pretty sure the big thing for discussing this is Lost Belt 3. Lost Belt 3. No, Lost Belt 6. 3 was the one in China, and Lost Belt 6, the one I actually did in 2024, was the one that took place in Fairy Britain. Strangely, it was the first of 3 games I played that year that involved fairies taking over Britain, and why you do not want fairies taking over Great Britain. It is going to end badly for everyone involved. And yes, as your legally distinct fey creature, yeah, I'm not even gonna lie. So, yeah, pretty good stuff. It's even now it's still considered the most popular story in the entire Fate Grand Order chapters, and there's been a decent amount released, including one that at time of streaming I'm still in the middle of, and it definitely deserves its reputation because it has a lot of moving parts in it, including doing some interesting things to the protagonist that I wasn't expecting to be blunt, since usually they have the protagonist as just a non-entity if we're blunt. He's barely even there because obviously they're supposed to be a stand in for the player, but I don't feel like it very much, especially since they don't really commit to it. Like, they do have a character flirt with MASH and stuff, but you don't really have a choice to be, I just want to be friends with her if you feel that way. And likewise, they go with a full. Beryl was definitely the equivalent. Is definitely the unambiguously evil guy. He's all, oh no, it's always funny when he basically died with, what do I do to deserve this? I mean specifically. And in a way I respect they didn't try to give him a sympathetic backstory. We already had a really, really good one before. mean, let me just make sure I pronounce it quickly. Kishtera Wodime. Yeah, I probably mispronounced it still, didn't I? I opened up the wiki and I still pronounce it wrong. Isn't that how it goes? But yeah, Wodime was a great villain with a sad backstory, and trying to have another one in a row would have definitely felt a bit weaker. So having Beryl just be an unrepentant, terrible little bastard made for a nice contrast. It's definitely one of those where you also needed Wodime, because if it was just Beryl alone, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting. And of course, Pepe is still the personal favorite of mine. I really do like how they handled him. I couldn't tell if he was going to join us or not, but yeah, the Cryptors have just been really engaging villains on the whole, I'd say. And for as much as a lot of people came out of Lost Belt 6 loving Morgan more than anyone else, I actually ended up liking Castoria. I grailed mine from 90 to 100 for no other reason than that story. Her story there just straight up impressed me. Yeah, it's great. Now, as for where it ranks here, that's going to be a bit more tricky, because it was a play once, and the story chapters you can't even replay, unfortunately. They don't have a New Game Plus option or whatever, which really sucks. I really wish they'd add one. But I'm also not sure I'd play it nearly as much as these others given the choice, because while I do go through events and stuff, if we're blunt, FGO's events feel extremely samey. I mean, it basically... Oh, the song's already running out. Alright, let me just replay it real quick. Because, let me just, here's FGO events in a nutshell. Oh no, we have a minute singularity. Yeah, it seems to be revolving around something weird, which turns out to be basically a meme. Then, as you go along, you meet the servants who are basically on rate-up or bonuses, is all tied around that meme. But then the true bad guy shows up and is, oh no, it wasn't a meme after all. It was an actual world-ending threat. And then then you fight him, and then it goes back to the meme for the post-game content where you get the welfare's copies and such, if applicable. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I do genuinely rate FGO's Lost Belt 6 highly, very highly. In fact, it would easily be above Streets of Rogue at the very least. I'm not sure if I can, in good faith, put it above even Vampire Survivors, just because, well, the rest of the game's kind of repetitive. I only really go through it for the welfares and stuff to play through, and it does let me do some interesting strategies now that I'm a veteran player, more or less. It still feels like you can tell the game is held back because it's a game from 2015, and they can't actually update the spaghetti code or anything because, first of all, they might break something more important, and also they can't possibly, they don't want to ruin a good thing, because the game still makes money hand over fist from whales pulling on the PNGs of waifus, or whales who want to feel smug at how they can carry newbies with their support lists. There's no PvP in the game, it is purely cooperatives. Oh. Which is nice on its own, by the way, but at the same time, you can tell the game's age is really catching up to it, so to an extent, it often feels like I'm just sitting here waiting for the next story chapter to come out, and the rest is just going through the motions. Part of me wants to put it below Lethal Company right now, but I don't know about that. If it was just Lost Belt 6, I'd probably put it above... I might put it between Vampire Survivors, Streets of Rogue, but if we're counting the events too, honestly, I'm even putting it above Lethal Company might be a bit much. Hurts putting it low, but again, it's not bad, it's just really rough to deal with, you know? It's just it's got some really rough competition is what I'm getting at. So yeah, I did genuinely love Lost Belt 6, and I've been finding Lost Belt 7 even now engaging as well, but like I said, it's hard to feel like I need to rate it only based on that, when the rest of the time I'm basically just going through the motions and waiting for the next story chapter. So, yeah, I don't think I can in good faith put it even above Lethal Company for now. We'll see. I have and in the past changed these lists midway through, so yeah, I guess we'll see. Alrighty, now what's the next game? Ah, finally we have ourselves a new game. I guess this is where I finally decided on what I wanted to play and started playing it. Backpack Hero. Let's go with just the town. Here we are. There we are, Haversack Hills theme. I guess since this is the only one here, it can only go one spot. Now the game is still getting updates, and I will say it's definitely it got very, very close to becoming another one in the rotation with Vampire Survivors and Streets of Rogue for one I might occasionally go back to. And it's not impossible, but it's kind of up there with Loop Hero for that. It has a lot going for it, but I'm also finding it a bit hard to motivate myself for whatever reason. Not to say I didn't enjoy my time, and I especially liked how each expedition character you can pick has a completely different playstyle. Like, I really didn't care for Tote too much, but I could definitely see why some might love her to the point they might play as only her. And it wasn't exactly a it was a rather straightforward story with trying to save the protagonist's mother from a medieval empire, but even it was a little weird to exploring a cave to find all that. Although the general lore about it possibly being a post-apocalyptic Earth after the animals came after humans was kind of an interesting thing. The story didn't revolve around it, but it did add a lot more, I guess. I definitely did love charming the enemies into helping with Satchel. Kind of... And it did feel genuinely satisfying to go through all that with all the characters and such. Getting to unlock the door at the end. So yeah, I genuinely enjoyed my time, and I don't want to make promises about playing it again, but hey, they still are updating the game, so I guess we'll see what the future brings, and I do hope the best for it, because they and the devs really deserve all the credit for all their hard work. Now let's see here. Final Fantasy XIV, Technically, the first one here is the 6.5 storyline. However, if we're going to be doing Final Fantasy XIV, there's really only one that I seriously streamed here because, for better for worse. Oh boy, this is gonna be rough. Now, even if you don't play, you probably heard that Dawn Trail is an extremely polarizing expansion, and that is 100% for pretty good reason. Actually, I do have there is music from there that works rather well. Now, where is it? I don't want to use any of the raid themes, so let's go with a dungeon theme. I will go with the Skydeep Canode, since that is not a spoiler. The dungeon itself existing is not a spoiler, so we'll go with that. But yeah, this one's gonna be not. Here we are. I'm not gonna lie, this one's gonna be really, really rough. Now, first of all, the main criticisms you're gonna hear all revolve pretty much entirely around the story, and unfortunately, I have to agree. The first half of the story is very, very slow. It basically feels like a reputation quest story, with the problem being that those are basically 4 quests split over a course of a month. So them being simple and straightforward works fine because, well, you're not going to be doing them all at once. You're not supposed to binge them, but the story, it's expected by default. You're supposed to binge those, so it just doesn't work. When forced to be the main story, it doesn't work out at all. There's a reason the most popular character there is a cool Jaja, basically the Vegeta, where he starts out as the biggest asshole ever, but then you find out his motivations, and then he basically turns into a himbo. It's kind of like Fordola from the Stormblood expansion in both the good and bad ways, because Fordola was also forgiven a little too quickly, given she was responsible for quite a few of the problems that were going on in Alamigo at the time. Granted, Fordola also had quite a few expansions and patches to expand things on, and given Bakul Jaja has already been in the next patch, he's likely going to be in the same spot. I imagine he's going to be considered a highlight in the same way once all the story's done. The second half, I think, is stronger, but you can definitely see Hello Shadowstorm work the stream. And yeah, it's kind of a tier list. I'm basically ranking them against one another. Yeah, the second half is stronger, I'd say, but I guess the elephant in the room is Wuklammat. On her own, she's not a bad character at all. It's just that her existence in the story drowns out everyone else to the point nothing else can breathe, including characters that were supposedly marketed as these are going to be main characters here, like Kryle, which I cannot overlook. On the gameplay side, they've actually been taking quite a few steps, though. Well, the final boss of Dawn Trail was the first time I ever wiped out an Agent One top followed by Paley Thulstrik. Yeah, I'm basically going through each one that I streamed during the game. Each one I streamed in order, starting from January, and I'm slowly adding them to the list based on wherever I feel like. And of course, I do change them sometimes because I can be very indecisive. But by and large, yeah. This is supposed to be roughly my thoughts on each one. Yeah. But, yeah. Dawn Trail, that's the thing is, Dawn Trail's Dungeons and Trials were the first time I actually ended up wiping at any point, even on stream. And that hasn't happened much at all. Well, it's happened on stream because I go with trusts and you can't be carried there. But even when playing with other players, that one... those dungeons actually have a chance of a party wipe if you aren't paying attention, and I haven't felt like that since Stormblood. So they definitely did put effort into these. I know a lot of top players have pointed out that you could just be like 4 DPS and stuff, but I'm not sure how much the Savage and Ultimate players could be considered the standard. Your average tank completely melts in a Dawn Trail dungeon, speaking from when I was playing as White Mage. Although, I guess if they're doing that, that means they aren't using their mitigation. Which is unfortunately common. Because tanks are blatantly overpowered in the game right now. They all have ridiculous amounts of self-heal and mitigation. And the only thing they lack is damage. And that's hardly a problem, since regular dungeons don't have enrage timers for the most part. The raids so far have gone over rather well. It's mostly just, party finder problems that's holding them back, but that's kind of be expected. Since Dawn Trail is entirely a new expansion, I think I can qualify it as a new game, but... Do I rank it above or below Backpack Hero? That's rough. Like I said, the story is one of the weaker it's been. It's not the worst, but I'd say that's... I've had some friends tell me that I'm being really kind to Dawn Trail, but here's the thing. it's if you ask me what my least favorite or what the worst expansion was, it's not going to be Dawn Trail. But if you ask me the best one or most favorite, it's not going to be Dawn Trail. Dawn Trail is straight up going to be forgotten whenever I start thinking of the expansions of the best and worst. So, depending on your point of view, that could be even worse. Because people who hate Dawn Trail at least will think about it whenever they think of ones they dislike. I won't even have that. I guess that's kind of the thing. Yeah. That's something that you're gonna have to ask yourself. Which is worse? One that you hate so much it just lives rent-free in your head, or one that you just feel little to nothing for? And I guess that's also the big thing Dawn Trail has. The big thing it's supposed to sell it on, like the open world exploration area for the relic weapon and the space exploration updates and all that. Those are not going to be coming to like the middle of the expansion, and we're not anywhere near that. We're still in the early parts, so so yeah, I can understand why some might find it better to wait until the 0.3 or 0.5 before coming back. As for me, that's a hard call. Backpack Hero is one, like I said, it's one that I might come back to, but at the same time, it's got some rough competition in its own right. And like I said, Dawn Trail I wouldn't consider the worst, but it's not great either, so, I will put it tentatively above Backpack, just because, it did have, like I said, it actually gave me a challenge that I hadn't had in the game for a while, but at the same time, maybe I should put it below. I'll put it here for now, but I'll say not to let it rest on its laurels, because there's a real chance I'm going to be moving it down later. Like I said, it's got left me with a lot of mixed feelings, and I guess in that way you could kind of compare it to Soul Hackers 2 last year. That was far from the worst rated game, but it left me with so many mixed feelings. Part of me wondered if I really enjoyed my time with it. Then again, and I actually had I had significantly more regrets with Soul Hackers 2, so shrug. Alright, let's see, what's the next game down the list? And Raging Loop. Oh boy. Let's see, Raging Loop main theme. Here we are. Okay, Raging Loop. A VN themed around a game of werewolf, where you're caught in a mysterious backwater town, and people are killing one another. Maybe. Like I said, a lot of stuff. But this one's gonna be fun to discuss. Now, because of the devs basically said if you want to stream a Raging Loop, please cut it off at a certain point. I did that and replayed it off stream, finished the rest off stream. But I'm going to be discussing spoilers because I'm afraid I can't really explain my opinion properly. Early on, the ones that I did stream was basically just an example game where the protagonist didn't even take part, but at the end he realized, yeah, the problem is he didn't take part. Or there was no possible way for the heroes to win, for the villagers to win that vote at the end, because the two wolves were alive. If one was always going to vote with one of the wolves simply because they were always friends. One was the Badger, who is basically the equivalent of the Jester or the Cultist in some games of werewolf, where they basically are a human, but they help the Wolves faction. So there was no possible way to win that. Unfortunately, the protagonist was able to do some really nice things in the other ones, and you even got to do a nice loop where you actually were a member of the Wolves. But the story is honestly a bit of a mess. I do like what they were going for, but it was not handled particularly well, and it is a rather goofy. Like, I can get the town basically being a town of rejects that the city sent people they don't want anything to do with anymore. Even kind of got a hint at that from the start, with everyone there being exiled or kicked out for one way or another, or even just left behind. But I think it's definitely one of those, long story short, it's one of those where the supernatural explanation would have made more sense than the actual one they went with, because this game went so out of its way to try and remove as many supernatural elements as possible. Well, it almost feels comical. Well, like, I can understand the city putting a fog machine to make everyone think they're in the Yomi and just shooting anyone who tries to escape, but some of them are rather silly, like take a grinding up bodies to make it look like a corruption killed them or whatever. Or that's a lot of steps just to get rid of a town of Hicks, from their opinion of it. From their opinion, yeah, their words, not mine. Now, not to say there weren't some supernatural elements and the big revelations. It turns out they actually it's a pretty fun stuff, but. And I do admit, I do genuinely like the twist when the protagonist revealed the name he'd been using the entire game. That was not it. Even I had never realized that bit, and that was really neat, but yeah. This is a game where I genuinely liked the what it was going for more than it actually did, because, like I said, it went out of its way to try and give some non-supernatural explanation to stuff when the supernatural would have actually been a lot more reasonable. And believe me, it takes a lot for that to be the case, so. It was definitely the weaker of the werewolf-themed games I played that year, so. Yeah. But the good news is, unlike some of the others on this list, this is one game where where it was fumbled so badly, I can't help but enjoy in that way. Like I said, this was fun to talk about just because it really did do a good setup with who the main villain was and how to go about it. It just kind of stumbled on it. Like the mysterious SCP, the gas station's basically an SCP that produces everything. That was a pretty neat, and the reveal at the end that it was just the HQ for some groups it was just well supplied, honestly made it feel a lot less fun than it just actually being an SCP that produces whatever he asks for in the back room. It was definitely better for that, in my opinion. Better with that level of mystery, in my opinion. That said, I will still say it felt. I am glad I played it. Because, like I said, even it's at least one of the fun screw ups where it's nice to talk about here and there. But I should probably avoid going too deep into it. And to be fair, I did like how it kind of showed the characters slowly descending, although hanging into their madness from the time loop. Because yeah, being part of a time loop will mess with your mind a lot. But it also wasn't exactly clear how many loops. They did occasionally say, "Oh, by the way, I did a few time loops before I finally got this right," but I don't know. Felt like it was but I do get it. It's better to expedite it than force the player to actually deal with those several loops. And I like the idea of the story they were going for, but again, that goes back to me liking the ideas and concepts, but not how they were executed. I'm just repeating myself now, so I guess that's a good time to move on. Still, the going through each one and unlocking each new key was pretty engaging. Kind of reminded me of the good parts of well, no. What was that game? Crap! I lost my train of thought. Oh well. Let's see your Lethal Company loop. Ah. we are. Next up, we're going with the second of the werewolf type single player werewolf games I played this year. Gnosia. This one instead being sci-fi and Among Us, basically. Like both with before, like with Raging Loop, your character finds themselves stuck in a time loop where they keep having to discover, or what seems to be a random amount of who are the killers, the mysterious Gnosia, and the regular crewmates, and you have to figure out who is who. There's a lot. While Raging Loop had a lot of VN story stuff between each actual round of killings and votings, Gnosia cuts it all down to just the voting parts and such, with just one bit of discussion here and there, with an occasional story beat breaking it up whenever you fulfill certain conditions. Gnosia, unlike Raging Loop, Gnosia focused very heavily on being a single-player or werewolf game. So, like with a werewolf game, you gradually learn about who your teammates are and how what their general game plan is. But of course, there are exceptions. Like one of them almost never falsely claims to be the engineer or whatever, but I've seen him do it sometimes. So they clearly have some level of exceptions, and that does add an extra layer to things. The gameplay is repetitive, but it also helped that after Raging Loop gave me blue balls from preventing it, and then ended up a bit disappointing after the story, Gnosia filled that hole very well, I'd say. And the big twist at the end was, it made sense. It turns out there was only one silver key that allowed us to go into a time loop, but this also but since both us and our partner our ally Setsu, well, the game lets you choose if you want to have a romantic interest in Setsu or just a professional friendship, but yeah, thing is, since you both have the same one, it clearly ends with one of you giving it to the other, so it is impossible to escape the time loop together. That was depressing, and I openly admit, I shed a tear. Yeah, I admit, I cried when I saw that, title screen with everyone except for Setsu, because you basically were able to banish the Gnosia and escape the time loop, but Setsu could not be with you. The one person who'd help you from the start, the one who gave you the silver key from the start. It was just really depressing. And yeah, I know I can be a very emotional person. You could pick a flower to sad music, it could make me tear up, but nonetheless, as that does to change that some stuff will just stick with you, and that scene stuck with me. Which also means when I finally worked out the puzzle, the way to work out the puzzle, I felt very, very satisfied. By the end, I genuinely felt like I had been playing the game with actual friends, and I felt like it had been through my hard work of working in the time loop to finally get everyone out of it. You know, except for the main. Well, there's not really a main villain, really, because even the rival character turned out to have a lot going on with her. So she didn't hate you for no reason. Just like everyone else, she had no idea if we were the Gnosia, we were the killers or not, so she had to take us every bit as seriously as everyone else. Also, even now I can think of basically everyone. From she being oddly charismatic goofball, Jonas being a slightly off captain. Chippy was the worst one to work with, because I could never tell if he's Gnosia or not. He's just too damn good at this game. Of course, the big reveals like Gina turning out to actually be very skilled without even realizing it. That's a really nice thing. Yeah, even Rakio, the one I didn't like at the start, ended up growing on me by the end. And I didn't yeah. I can kind of... Now, and yeah, I did learn about their backstory early on, but it didn't really he endear me to them until I finally learned, oh, they're the kind of character where they either get voted off really early on or they become a huge problem later because they are very, very good at sussing out the Gnosia and getting everyone to vote for them. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, the only one who ends up the one I didn't like Xiaoming in the end, and poor Remnan. I don't know how, but somehow I managed to get him voted off when he was the uh, one who couldn't possibly, a role that can't possibly be faked. I guess his charisma was just that low. And yeah, it worked out for everyone except SQ's mom. But then again, and she did say she wanted immortality, and being stuck in a time loop does grant it to you. So I guess whether or not that counts as a poison chalice is entirely up to your opinion. But for me, I think Gnosia is easily the top here, at least of what we have so far. It definitely succeeded. Yeah, like I said, Raging Loop was trying to tell a story here with the werewolf game as a major theme, but Gnosia focuses mostly on being a werewolf game simulator with a story around it. But overall, I still think Gnosia works better, or just for what because it succeeded at what it was trying to go for. By the end, I genuinely felt like I knew each character like we really were a bunch of friends playing the game. I felt sad seeing them go, and like I said, that ending was very satisfying and felt genuinely earned once I figured out the puzzles, so yeah, I just have to put it up there. Out of all the ones we've done so far, it definitely feels like it definitely was the one that made me feel great upon ending. There's a reason I only got a handful of games this year that I could only get a handful of custom thumbnails, but there's a reason I chose Gnosia as one of them. I'm glad I did. Next up is Pseudoregalia. Alrighty. Alright, let's go with the theme of Empty Bailey. Now, let me say here. Here we are. Go the Empty Bailey for the music here. Now, Pseudoregalia was one that I was genuinely unsure about. On one hand, it was highly recommended by a lot, but on the other, the main character was very attractive, so I wasn't sure if that was causing anything, but no. In the end, it was a genuinely great game. It was definitely in the Mario 64 bit. I remember at the time I said that it felt too advanced to be a PlayStation 1 game because that's 32 bits. I ended up calling it a PlayStation 2, but I think that's because when I think of PlayStation 2, I think of games like Ico, but those are very low quality, low spec, I guess, because the graphics for stuff like Ico is very low compared to what the PS2 is actually known for. So while many call it a PS2 game, I'd say it's more like an N64 game. It's not... yeah, because I was pointed out to me that it's way too advanced for the 32 bits that a PlayStation 1 game would be, but I don't think it looks good enough to be a PlayStation 2 game, so N64 seems like a good one. Now, for the game itself, well, it's definitely a game that's very open, and depending on the order you do things, you can do quite a bit. Honestly, for a while, I genuinely thought that maybe I'd have to just call the stream, because during the second part, I got stuck on so many places because I thought I just straight up wasn't skilled enough to do them. I could get close, and yet my skill just didn't feel good enough. Well, it turns out I was actually playing on hard mode and didn't realize it, because while I did get the pogo jump early, I completely missed the cling gem until the tail end. Which means I was actually more skilled than I thought I was, apparently, because I beat a lot of challenges that were clearly meant for you to use with the cling gem without it. Even the ones I technically thought I was incapable of beating, I might have been able to if I kept out, or at the very least there's YouTube videos of other people beating them, so it's definitely possible. But dang. It was definitely... I did like how each area was very clearly visually distinct, so I could tell where I was at any given time. Which is good, because with low poly graphics, you only have so many ways to differ those areas. And of course, when I discovered stuff like how I could use the backwards double jump to go back after a wall cling, that just felt like a very satisfying thing when I discovered, oh wait, I could do this all the time? Because it's actually genuinely impressive what you're capable of doing in that game, even without any upgrades. Getting some of them early, like I did the pogo jump, really does a lot to help your traversal abilities, but the game lets you get away with quite a bit. The story is light, but it was only later I kind of realized that, yeah, the reason our character has the outfit she does is because she's got a very poor disguise trying to be like one of the butler goats. And the Pseudoregalia and the mysterious princess was, apparently someone stuck in their dream world. I thought maybe it was a younger person, but upon looking at it again, it's probably an adult who was, felt like they were stuck in a rut. Dang. In some ways that can be quite relatable. But yeah, the point is, they were retreating into their own fantasy world and refusing to leave, and that's ultimately what the protagonist, Sybil, was trying to... Sybil? How do you pronounce that? Yeah, just trying to save them from. It's kind of neat. It was very light on the story, but it was more than enough because, well, the game is obviously focused about traversal mechanics and discovery and such, which not unlike those N64 games like Mario 64. And I have to say it absolutely succeeded at that. In some ways, it might have even surpassed them, because I don't recall Mario 64 having anything where things just suddenly clicked and I thought, wait a minute, I could do this all the time, and then complete a challenge that seemed like it was impossible at the time. This game absolutely got popular for a damn good reason. Now the only question is, do I want to put it above Gnosia or below Gnosia? It's definitely being at the top, one of the top two, because there's no way it's going to be below any of the others. And yeah, and of course it had no shortage of good music, but the Empty Bailey is definitely a personal favorite, so that's why I'm playing it here. My gut tells me put it here for now, but it could easily be moving up. Gnosia does a lot, but like I said, if I wasn't specifically in the mood for Among Us gameplay there, for a single-player werewolf game, it would have gotten very repetitive very quickly. Pseudoregalia does not, and that's kind of a big deal. At the same time, though, it could also be the fact that I was streaming it meant I felt like I was trying to push myself for progress at all times in Pseudoregalia, whereas, even though there were some areas I could have pushed a bit further, then again, I could have pushed further in some of the areas like in the library, but I also at the same time felt like, this isn't quite as fun. This is a really tough one. But there's a reason this is also one of the few games that I got a custom thumbnail for my VOD. It was a genuinely wonderful experience. And of course, it even got some updates later, which is pretty neat, especially the costume stuff. I imagine that's going to be appreciated for many. let's look through the next here. Yeah, there's a lot of more Vampire Stars stuff. Oh, right, Arknights is a returning one. Alrighty. Alright, so next up is going to be Arknights. Now again, I've did a lot of different things, usually some event EX stages, but there was, the one I did mainly was chapter 14, so let's play a song from that. The final boss, Ratio Ultima. In some ways the chapter 14 worked better than what Dawn Trail was going for, since it was also about a character. It also had to deal with the dead all basically getting saved to a hard drive where they could never truly rest. Actually, no, not really. Okay, I guess that doesn't work at all. Still, well, I was genuinely unsure what was going on with their son until well, we finally got the answers there. It was neat seeing the story develop there, and I was. It turns out one of the leaks I'd gotten about the story was wrong. I thought W was going to turn out to be the Luca, the last Universal Common Ancestor. Turns out that might actually be the Doctor, not her. Yeah. W just got her a big upgrade because she stole a bunch of tech that wasn't hers and made it herself more powerful with it. That's kind of funny. I'm a bit back and forth with Arknights. Similar to Fate Grand Order, it does sometimes feel like we're biding time until the other stuff. But at the same time, I do think their individual events are a bit more engaging. If anything, I think Arknights could use a bit more lighthearted stories here and there, because damn near every story and event is incredibly depressing. Not to say there isn't some good stuff. Like when Siege finally activated the Sigh of Kings, the totally not Excalibur sword. That was a triumphant moment. Seeing the zombie horde taken down, turned around and taken down was also pretty exciting. The story had been building up for quite some time, and Chapter 14 was definitely a pretty good payoff, I'd say. As for the characters themselves, it was a pretty big power creep, but I think I got the ones that mattered most. I can last without the absolute strongest of strongest. Besides, the ones I have are pretty good to begin with. As for where it goes, like I said, I think it handles events a bit better, even though they're kind of depressing. But, at the very least, I should put it above Fate Grand Order. I might even put it above Lethal Company, just because I don't feel like they've made as many missteps. But, hard to say. Like I said, part of the thing with Lethal Company is because the developer just adds whatever seems like a good idea at the time, and works things around here and there. Then again, Arknights does have a nice thing going for it that a lot of licensed gachas like Fate Grand Order don't have, and that's that most of the money goes back into the game. It earns goes back into the game itself, and the production values have in fact increased over time. Meanwhile, Fate Grand Order, most of the money that game makes doesn't actually go back into Fate Grand Order. That's rather known. Granted, with stuff like the Strange Fake anime coming up at time of streaming, one could argue it's still going somewhere productive, but at the same time, like I said, the game's really old and it's showing age, and not spending as much money on it. Well, I imagine part of it is because they don't want to accidentally ruin a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, well, it's partially because I imagine it's in part because they don't want to ruin a good thing because the game is still successful. It's also because they don't want to spend more money on it than they absolutely have to when they can spend it on other things. So, yeah, I'm not going to be... I don't want to be too nice by accident. Elden Ring. Alright, here we are. Now, let's see here. Oh. Right. Hold on. Seriously? So I now got my big ass ears in front of the text. Not much I can do about that, I suppose. But yeah. Next up is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which I did with my multiplayer team. Dang. In terms of actual... Yeah, this is definitely a step up. I genuinely loved Elden Ring, even with its flaws before, and that does apply to the DLC. Yeah. It definitely does some things that I find highly questionable, but it also does some things really neat, like how it handles the, Shadow Tree fragments and stuff, which I kept pronouncing as Skadoo due to the spelling. Which, of course, pissed off my teammates to no end, since they know how it's supposed to be pronounced. Still, well, it does do the usual Elden Ring thing of telling you a lot without having to actually directly say too much dialogue. I mean, they do directly tell you some things, such as the mysterious Finger Mother and the whole thing with Mesmer, or as well as how he realized he was betrayed. That was pretty heavy stuff. And of course, Midra, the Lord of Chaos. All he did was endure constant agony and pain, because if he ever gave in, he would become the Lord of Chaos and destroy the world. But he also... but if he doesn't, he just has to constantly endure her. And hey, for once the murder hobo option was right, because the Tarnished kills him, that freed him. He no longer has to have eternal pain and suffering, and nor does he have to worry about ending the world if he ever stopped enduring it. He was... And of course, we found out more about and of course, the truth behind Marika's ascension to godhood was itself rather interesting. The Horned Scent thought they were doing the shaman the favor by fusing them all together in pots and jars. So they thought it was a betrayal when he attacked them, because yeah, why wouldn't she appreciate being forcibly made to suffer for the sake of their fusion, right? And of course, Mikola. We had no idea if he'd be a friend or foe in the main game, but wow, he might be one of the most evil villains, and I mean that in the best possible way. Evil villains of the whole game. When we saw him abandoning parts for the sake of his pilgrimage, we knew something was up, but the moment we saw he gave up his love, that's when that guy wasn't kidding. We said, oh no, Mikola, you gave up something you should not have. Because yeah, Mikola wanted to unite the world into an empire of compassion, but you cannot have a compassionate empire when giving up your own empathy as a result. All that results in is here a gilded cage. It's still very much tyranny. Yeah. And of course, he forced Radon to be his consort and all that. The thing that Radon fought to Malenia in the first place to avoid becoming. Yeah. And the fact that he can even brainwash the player into becoming a minion if you aren't careful shows you just how scary that kind of power is. And when they say my power is empathy and that person turns out to be the worst person ever, that's why. Empathy, being able to read and control emotions is an extremely powerful ability. Yeah, for both good and ill, and that's why it's extremely dangerous who has that kind of power. I think even Star Trek has had that in the before, where I think it was Dana Troy. Yeah, she uses it for productivity, but others in her race that they fought on occasion, quote unquote fought, to have dealt with, end up using it to try and control people. It is truly a scary power. I think I've even mentioned before that I consider emotion reading to be more powerful than mind reading, because you can hide your conscious thoughts or disguise them, but your subconscious, your emotions, that is significantly harder. Or, that's very dangerous. So, it was absolutely an unforgettable experience. We even, and I was even, and as per usual, like I said, it does tell you a lot without having directly telling you, like how, oh, the characters who help you out in the final boss fight, you see them dead afterward. It's very clear they sacrificed themselves to ensure your victory, to ensure Mikola could not succeed after his ascension. No. A lot of people debate if the DLCs and stuff should count towards Game of the Year and such. I will not give an answer in this stream, but I will say for the purpose of this list, expansion stuff do count as new games, hence why Dawn Trail's on there, so... I know it's about as stereotypical as possible, but I'm gonna put it at the top for the moment. Sigh. I hate this. Alright, I'll do it that way. Yeah, I know it's absolutely not interesting to have a game that that's already considered amazing to indeed be at the top or near the top of my list, but it really did leave a pretty solid impact on me, and even playing with friends who were impressed at the stuff that came up. There's just a lot of memorable scenes there, or including ones we're working together, so I'm feeling confident about placing it there. Alrighty, what's the next game on the list? Let's see here. Vampire Survivors, Lethal Company. Here we are. Kakarot. Here we are, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Hopefully it's coming through. Alright, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Went in not entirely knowing what to expect. I knew it was an open world Dragon Ball game, but it was pointed out this wasn't a fighting game, and I started playing through, learning new moves. I realized this is an action RPG. The first one since the Legacy of Goku trilogy, and once that snapped into place, I realized this was a spiritual successor to the Legacy of Goku trilogy, and that just filled me with so much glee. Yeah. I mentioned it then, I'll mention it now. I grew up with the Legacy of Goku trilogy. That's a core memory for me. And once it did, I couldn't help but love every bit of this game. It took me a bit to get the battle system down. Once I did, it was kind of neat how you could even have a party system, but yeah, because of the way the story goes, you're kind of forced to be very specific characters at very specific points, and unfortunately, like with the main series, that also means that a lot of characters that were essential early on, like Piccolo, end up falling off later. I think the last actual story mandatory fight for Piccolo was the one against Android 17, and then that was basically it. And that was in the Cell Saga, the second to last one. Some of the stuff they tried to add to the canon, like Goku No, Gohan tries to find out why Vegeta and him stopped becoming great apes. He theorizes that it might be that they just became stronger than what the great ape form could offer, but hard to say. Yeah, Vegeta. Once Vegeta learned that legendary Super Saiyan existed, he basically didn't care about any other transformation because he wanted that one. And his pride, he'd and constant desire for proving himself worthy of proving himself worthy of his title of Prince of Saiyan, and wouldn't have anything less. And then it tried to explain how animal people were there, but it kind of contradicts itself. It says it was caused by a drug that has gone out of style and people don't like anymore, but there's plenty of animal people running around this towns that aren't bothered, so it kind of contradicts its own canon right there. It also had stuff like Yamcha constantly cheating on Bulma, which, to be fair, Kakarot did not invent that. That was something retconned in later to try and help justify Bulma leaving him for Vegeta later in the story, which that's going to be awkward no matter what you do, because while Vegeta directly didn't kill all the people in the Saiyan saga, that, aside from, it was pretty much entirely Nappa, that doesn't change that Nappa was doing it entirely on Vegeta's orders. So the blood is absolutely still in his hands. And yeah, nowadays it's pretty easy to forgive in the sense that, yeah, these two people deserve each other. But it's easy in the sense of these two people deserve each other, but it's still rather awkward for the time. It seemed rather awkward when it happened. Many people speculated that Toriyama ended up doing that because Trunks needed to be a Saiyan from the future, but he couldn't be Goku's kid, so he had to do Vegeta's. But then who would Vegeta be with? He had to choose the most convenient and one there for him to hook up with. He just happened to get lucky to work out. But I guess that's Toriyama's writing style in a nutshell. Flying by the seat of his pants and hoping it all works out. Part of me wonders if I should be doing this off the cuff like I am here, or if I should have at least put some bullet points of things to bring up. Because I know I could rant a lot more about some of the other. I could definitely have gone more about the problems with Raging Loop, and I could definitely say a lot more things about Kakarot. Especially with how easy it was, easy and painless to go back to some older quests. Plus, it has a pretty healthy end game, even if you don't count the DLC. And for the record, indeed, the DLC is all extremely grindy, to the point that I just don't think it'd be very fun to do. And yeah, the Battle of Gods DLC does give you some stuff to help grind yourself to cap easier, so you can start doing all that, but yeah, it just doesn't feel as satisfying for Blunt. So I'm glad I just ended it at the end of the main story stuff. Plus, I do like that they did, in fact, add that time stop moment so that Goku could have a proper final boss fight against Kid Buu before there. Goku may be unhinged and love a battle, but he still takes things seriously. Yeah, I mean, he can't stop him here. The entire world, everyone I care about's doomed. I will not let that happen. There's definitely a lot to Goku's character, that's for sure. It's also why I was a bit disappointed they didn't have that scene where he saw Vegeta turn to a great ape and he realized that he was the great ape that killed his grandpa. That was a pretty huge scene for him in the series. I was kind of hoping it'd be there, but ah well. I think I even mentioned that while I was playing Kakarot, I ended up, when a major scene came up, I'd look at compilations of it. You'd expect that the major scenes, like Goku going Super Saiyan for the first time, or Gohan defeating Cell, you'd think those those scenes would be gradually getting higher and higher quality, but no. Turns out they were usually done well in early stuff like Budokai 1, then the others were just kind of there, only really coming back for maybe Burst Limit, but otherwise, by and large, Kakarot was the one where they all finally took a step better, for the better. But that's kind of nice. It'd been a while since Dragon Ball, and unfortunately, I'd already planned it by the time we lost Toriyama, so wow, talk about a time At the start of 2014 is when I suddenly felt like really getting back into Dragon Ball, and wow, I guess it was the most fitting time to do so. He'll have quite the legacy behind, that's for sure. He's even mentioned that he liked that the series would even outlive him, so hopefully he can rest knowing that he brought so much joy to so many people, myself included, to be sure. My life growing up would absolutely never have been the same if it wasn't for Dragon Ball. Yeah, and I do mean all of it. Dragon Ball and Z and all that. I wasn't too big on GT, but at the same time I can understand why people felt like why the people who made it felt like the ending to Z was unsatisfying and they wanted more of it. Always leave them wanting more, as they say. And hey, even people like me who don't like GT will still admit there's a handful of good villains there like Baby and Sin Shenron who are definitely worth having. So I guess that's how it goes with a long-running franchise. Take with the good, with the bad. And yeah, if anyone wanted to replay the Dragon Ball storyline, I would absolutely recommend Kakarot, as long as you remember it's an action RPG and not a fighting game. Because if you want a fighting game with proper combos and stuff, you'll definitely want to go with Sparking Zero, which is genuinely great, of course. Now let's see, what comes after Kakarot? Oh yeah, I did Lost Belt 6.5 Trom that year as well. Trom was genuinely okay, genuinely pretty fun. Not nearly as complicated as Fairy Britain was, but I think that's a good thing. It was a nice palate cleanser. Although I do wish it didn't end on that big reveal and cut to black afterward, because then they had to start the Lost Belt 7-1 going through all that. Indigo Park doesn't really have music. It doesn't have too much music, so I don't want to risk a copyright strike with the rambly song at the end, so maybe I'll go with a here. Let's go with a Moggy Brilliant Park. Something that's yeah, as much as I'd love to do the Moggy Brilliant Park opening, that's also going to get me slapped with a copyright strike there. I know, we'll go with the Nier Automata's amusement park dungeon theme. Oh, I forgot to put Kakarot on here. Okay, well, I am extremely biased and want to put it straight at the top. So I'm gonna do that. It's completely unfair. It is definitely nowhere as good as Elden Ring, though. But I'm gonna do it anyways because it's my list. But next up we have Indigo Park. Alright, Indigo Park. Now, Indigo Park was one I chose on my own. I've mentioned a few times that sometimes when I do a horror game, I ask a friend who's much more of a horror aficionado for advice, but this one was one I chose entirely on my own. And it was chosen because I wanted to try out something, because this was when Twitch Studio finally got lost its support from Twitch itself, and so I had to switch to OBS, and so I needed to use a game as a guinea pig to try out OBS on, and unfortunately it failed the first time. I ended up with a strange situation where my action stuff were half an hour behind. It was weird. But after I fixed those problems, I felt like Indigo Park needed some more time, because I was genuinely enjoying it for a while. It's a very short game, it's a very short game to be sure. But nonetheless, I decided to go for it and played, and Yeah, it's definitely one of those games where how much you like it is going to depend entirely on how much you like Rambly, because Rambly is the thing it has that stands out from all others in the genre. Granted, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, because you need something to stand out, you know? And the selling point is very good. The biggest complaint that I'm seeing is that it's straight up not scary, and I can get that. You're not actually in any danger until the final chase scene at the end. And even then, I'm not sure what the hint was. It says, don't be fooled by Molly's ability to fake voices, but I don't think she does that at any point. And so it's a little weird. And also, apparently the demo changed the one of the puzzles I did afterward. I don't know what the deal is with that, but whatever. Still, like I said, it has a lot of personality to it, and a big thing is it actually does introduce you not just to the dangers, but also gives you what Rambly's motivations are and what's likely going to be the motivations for the rest of the for the remainder of the chapters, I guess. I believe I mentioned it before, but my understanding is that Indigo Park was made by a YouTuber who felt that mascot horror was insufficient and felt that even he could do a better job, and he only started making the next chapters and merch stuff if people actually wanted it, which they did. I can understand why it took off because of Rambly is such a great character, but I can also see where people say that's not very scary, because like I said, it doesn't really have that much threatening, and the atmosphere, it's alright. It's definitely a neat little park there, and I even noticed a few of the cool stuff like the statue of the totally not Walt Disney character always chasing you. That said, it's of course not a problem that's insurmountable. The dev could either amp it up for the next one, or it could go into more of a non-horror direction, like maybe having the park become less and less scary as you fix it up and such. There's a lot of ways that can be dealt with that. And like I said, it pretty much entirely revolves on Rambly. We don't know if Rambly is good or if he's going to betray us. Like, he's going to make us refuse to let us leave because he doesn't want to lose his only friend or whatever. But I guess that's part of the fun. It can go anywhere, but we also have a clear direction where it's going. It's not like some of the others where it doesn't even tell you your character's motivation being there. Our protagonist is clearly given a reason to be in the park. They're YouTubers seeking some content to create, and also they have a personal attachment in the park, so it was a match made in heaven. No waiting till like the halfway point to learn why we're actually there or anything like that. And even as for where it goes, it's definitely a good start, but as I said, it's very, very early on and very little is established. I don't want to put it above Gnosia, but I definitely... Here we are. Definitely goes up here. Yeah, it's definitely a fun ride, and I'm definitely going to be following along if they continue it. I'm not too much of a horror guy, so take my opinion with a massive grain, well, even with even a bigger grain of salt than you usually do with the online opinions, but yeah. I genuinely enjoyed my time with it, and I look forward to seeing more of it. So fingers crossed it ends up good, because right now it feels like the world is the Indigo Park's oyster, because they could do a lot with it, and I hope it ends up fun. I really love Kakarot being up there, but I probably shouldn't. Hold on. Don't get me wrong, I do genuinely love Kakarot, but... I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna be switching up this list a lot, I can tell you that much. Alrighty, well, I guess that's about it for Indigo Park. What's next? Starstruck Vagabond. Ooh. Here we are. Alright, the music here are short loops, so about that. Alright, so let's first things first. This has changed now. Starstruck Vagabond, the next game by Yahtzee. Starstruck Vagabond, as Yahtzee calls it, a post-dad game, and with writing based upon things like Red Dwarf and the gameplay based upon things like Stardew Valley and Elite Dangerous. You play a space trucker delivering packages throughout the galaxy. He is slowly trying to figure out the truth behind a mysterious egg that appeared in the middle of it. And yeah, it turns out there's a number of things you can do in there, including resetting, basically resulting in a new game plus, removing the story stuff where you can just worry about the deliveries and such. Yahtzee calls this kind of genre a post-dad game, a sort of job simulator with a story attached to it. The dad game being the term he uses to refer to these job simulators, and post-dad game being job simulators that also have a story, an engaging story to them. And so he basically made this as the kind of game he'd enjoy here. And I can definitely see the influence there. It's definitely my style in seeing through all of it there. He even did some more patches after I completed... Even did a nice content update after I completed my stream, so there was more stuff to spend money on and work on. It's pretty neat. You by far do not have to 100% the galaxy or anything. I don't believe I end up doing so in the end either. So... But there's definitely a way to do it. The only thing is the gameplay's pretty repetitive, so if you're hoping to know life it, to play it dedicated, you might run into trouble. It's definitely a second screen material where you do something. It's definitely second screen material, yeah, where you can work on something else while playing it, so... It's a very, very niche appeal, but I'd say it's genuinely great within that niche. Oh hey Emma, welcome. I'm just going through my rankings for the games I played, so hopefully... I genuinely love Starstruck Vagabond for what it was going for, but I can also see why it's not... Well, how can I put this? Well, it's a game by Yahtzee, so the writing is definitely the strongest point, both for the characters and for the overall story. Yeah, and the one that developed for me even worked out rather well, since the big sacrifice at the end was a lot more fitting than I was expecting. Kinda neat. I was genuinely feeling for my character by the end, and I assume that's what he was going for. The gameplay, he is a lot more repetitive, but it is... Yeah, Yahtzee's previous games had a bit of an issue with weaker gameplay, but I do think doing that 12 games in 12 months did a lot, because the gameplay for Starstruck Vagabond definitely does, Oops. It does do a good job for what it's here for, that's for sure. I don't want to sound like I'm damning with faint praise by saying it's some of the best gameplay he's done so far, but I mean in the sense of what it was going for, because it does do its job well. Let's see here. Now let's see. Now, where would I rank it? It's definitely above Indigo Park, I'd say, but Gnosia or Pseudoregalia? Pseudoregalia is basically all gameplay. Gnosia has a pretty good focus on that too, although Gnosia also has a pretty good story in its own right, especially with how hard the time loop stuff can hit you in the feels. Part of me wonders if I put Pseudoregalia a little too high. Then again, that's hard to say. Yeah, this is why I keep making notes that my opinions can change over time, because I'm pretty much guaranteed even once I finish this list, I'm gonna be completely changing my mind as soon as the stream ends, but... Well, one step at a time, one step at a time. Oh. Out of space. Me and my team played this for about 3 hours. Remember, we usually stream for about 5 when we're together. However, we spent that entire time bickering, fighting, and generally just failing to make any progress. Now, some of it could be on us, but I also think the game just straight up wasn't fun. And for blunt, it's one of the very few games I've ever asked for a refund on. And I guess any game that makes us turn on one another and immediately demand a refund is definitely for the on the bottom here. It's probably the only. Yeah, that was genuinely an I'm sure there's people who love this game, and if so, at least someone enjoyed it. But I'm sorry, I just couldn't stand it. All right, what's next? Huh? Super Animal Royale was this year. Hmm. Normally, as someone who can't stand battle royales, I only grabbed this for no other reason than it was free. It was something we could play, and it was not out of space. So it was one. It was a game that some of the other members of our team had thrown across as a possible game we could play in our multiplayer weekly multiplayer game, but I was one of the people who just always vetoed it, but in this case, I decided not to veto it and said, let's just all go with this one since we all know it, we all can dive in. And honestly, it was actually a lot better than I was expecting. I'm not sure how highly I can rate it. At 1 month, during 1 month, I actually did spend a whole week playing through to try and get a lot more practice in so that I could be sure to help my team a lot more. And I do definitely think that was to my benefit because this is definitely a game where you need to get the right feel of it before you can contribute too much. Slade keeps insisting he's horrible at it, but honestly, I don't think he's any worse than Namir Jasper. We're all just. I do admit we do need to work on our teamwork, but by and large, we still get the job done, I'd say. As for ranks here, it's definitely better than Raging Loop. Backpack Care, I don't know. It's nice, but it's not even one I'd choose if given a choice, if we're honest, because I might have to start shrinking the text size. Yeah, here we go. That's a lot better. Yeah, I think that's gonna work. Yeah, I still wonder, maybe I should put Kakarot above Elden Ring again, because again, it's a personal list, and that's genuinely amazing, but, genuinely a fun game. I loved it, but I don't know. Yeah, here's the part of the story where I did Dawn Trail, whole streams. Yeah, it left me with so many mixed feelings on that. Still, I guess the gameplay must have been doing it because I did the role quests almost immediately after the expansion dropped, and that says a lot because I did love unironically love the Endwalker story, but I didn't do those role quests until well, about a year later. Some more Dawn Trail, Sar. I did some solo Sar, but I didn't enjoy as much as I was hoping I would, I guess, because I never did again. I only did like twice, then never again. 7 Days to Die. Oh yeah, the 7 Days to Die finally got its big release here. Hold on. 7 Days to Die did finally get its official release, and it does have a nice progression there, but it also has a lot of drawbacks. It's a very simplistic game where I think most of the fun was just working together with Jasper and Slade as we made our base. We worked on our quests together and all that. So yeah, I think in this case it's definitely the friends did that. But I guess I can't sit here and say it's not incredibly satisfying to slaughter the zombies in there. And that's definitely what kept us going back. But at the same time, I don't think I could put it too much higher than anything else. Yeah, I think that it's gonna have to be below even Fate Grand Order here. Fate Grand Order had some very engaging stories in 2024. As did Arknights, for that matter. Lethal Company I might be being too nice to, but I don't know. It still feels right to have it there, and so that's where I'm leaving it. More SAR, more... Shinogi Chess Club 2! Alrighty, next up we have Shinogi Chess Club, so let me do that. Alrighty, Shinogi Chess Club 2. Alright, Shinogi Chess Club 2, where we finally learned out the truth behind our main character's mother and her motivations for starting that resistance group, and then leaving that and starting another resistance group, completely different from before. It did seem a little silly to be repeating stuff like that, but yeah, the more we learned about her mother, the more we learned about Himiko's mother, the more I realized she was a pretty awful person. She clearly had a lot more to her adopted daughter than her biological one, and like with Mikola, she was trying to create a world of a world of compassion without having any compassion of her own. And yeah, like with Mikola, I get the point of removing love and compassion stuff is to remove biases and things that could get in the way of being properly impartial, but you can't have a sympathy without any of your... You can't have a world of sympathy without any of your own, you know? So this was pretty not good. So like with Mikola, I knew it could only ever end badly. But the thing is, Himiko is pretty much embracing her dark side now. With this in mind, the apple is not falling far from the tree, and that's gonna be pretty nasty. Interestingly, after I completed my stream, the dev contacted me, and apparently I found a glitch that he didn't even know about. So in a later update, he, more specifically, during the gym investigation segment, I found a way to squeeze behind the bleachers to get to the other half of the gym where you weren't supposed to go there. So in a later update, he simply made it so that if you do that, you basically get a special message from the dev for finding it. And that's pretty neat. It's pretty cool. Episodes. Now, apparently there's going to be 3 episodes, but the next one is going to be a bit, since he's going to be working on the sequel to Burden of Proof. That's fine. I may not be the biggest fan of episodic games, but I do get why people like them and why they can be good to be used, so... Well, I genuinely look forward to seeing what's going to happen, because sometimes I can't... While I do feel like I do want to help Himiko, who I have a hard time figuring if having her succeed is actually helping her or setting her up for a fall in the future. And I look forward to seeing how the dice roll, so to speak. This is definitely... I'm always feel awkward about this one since, like I said, this is one of the few times a dev has gotten in touch with me, so... Part of me wonders if maybe I'm going to be nicer to these than I should, or if maybe I'm going to be more harsh than I normally would just to avoid the former situation from happening. Well, at the very least, While it is episode 2 of 3, I do think it has a bit of setup and payoff compared to Indigo Park. So I guess for now, I'm going to put it above that. The Resistance subtile Shinogi Chess Club 2 and the Shinogi Chess Club 2 Resistance subtitles definitely takes multiple meanings, both in the sense of her mother running. We finally learned about the truth behind her mother's resistance, as well as having to resist others taking control there. Kinda neat. Alrighty, let's see. What is the next? I guess I could keep that playing for the moment. Now let's see, what is the next one? Let's see here. Deadlock. I only did this for one day on stream. Deadlock is a game that I genuinely think is pretty good, but you can also tell that Valve was putting it out a bit earlier than they had been planned because, you know, it had been leaked. So at that point they figured, might as well make it public. It's a game I genuinely liked, but at the same time, it's also it dedicates to what it is. Wow, I'm losing my train of thought here. Yeah, I should probably, I should seriously consider start putting together bullet points. Maybe not as, I have considered putting bullet points for each game as I play them throughout the year, but at the same time, like I said, I'm one of those people where I have to let thoughts settle and such before I really put through, so before I can really put my thoughts down, and even then, so yeah, I don't want to make some notes throughout the year and constantly update those, but I guess I could consider making a set of notes before the next one. I have a year to prepare. I'll think about it. But for now, Deadlock is definitely one of those games where you can have a lot of fun with builds, but I also had a lot of fun because it was very early in the game's lifespan, because it's definitely one of those games where once people get a feel for it and realize what the most optimal builds are, you're gonna have to do those, or else you're gonna have some trouble. Or else you might have some trouble, either on your own performance, or you might cause problems with the team, neither of which is any good. So you have to be very careful about that. I guess that's the eternal struggle with a game like that, but I do generally think it's good. It's a good game, but I don't personally have as much connection to it as some of the others on this list. Plus, again, it's very clearly an incomplete game. So, it's an early alpha, I think, so, I guess I'll put it here. It's also one of those games where it's ideal with multiplayer, so you definitely want to be playing with friends where possible. Core Keeper is up next. I did like it to some degree, but at the same time, it was one of the reasons I ended up a bit burned out. I think I was burned out on survival crafting after that one, so it could have just arrived at the worst time, which I get is not fair to it, but oh, right. Gotta update. Yeah, because Core Keeper hit the 1.0 here. Yeah, I'll just keep up with the music here. Yeah, there's definitely some fun stuff to be had in Core Keeper, but again, I think a lot of it was just with the team I was with and us working together for it. I don't feel good about putting it above Backpack Hero, so I'm gonna keep it below Backpack Hero. Honestly, I'd only say Out of Space and Raging Loop are the ones out of this whole list I'd say are actually bad. And even then, Raging Loop I'd say at least had some good concepts and such, and Out of Space is just not my style. So, you could reasonably argue none of the mine here are bad. Operation Lucent Arrowhead. Yeah, that was when Arkanites did their second crossover with Rainbow Six, and so I streamed that one because that one doesn't get a record naturally. They don't naturally get one, I mean. Ooh, Half-Life 2. Alright, I'm gonna put Half-Life 2 and the episodes here all in one go because they're basically all connected. Now, Half-Life 2 is basically a bunch of linear set pieces together, but I don't mind a linear game like that. It makes sure that things are constantly moving at a decent pace and that you don't repeat set pieces at any point rather well. And unlike the first game, 2 really put an effort into making the characters a lot easier to connect with, and I think they succeeded very well there. They're pretty short and sweet, and unfortunately, I now am among those who are upset with the big cliffhanger. And yeah, I know apparently they've done stuff about that since, but I can't play Half-Life Alyx because I don't have VR, and I'm not particularly interested in it, so... And even then, Valve mentioned that they didn't want to release another one until they felt like they had another good gimmick to revolutionize things with. Half-Life 2 also has the quote-unquote honor of being one of the very few games that made me physically ill because my body could not handle the motorboat segment. I don't know why. The other vehicle sections were a little better. Also, apparently I had accidentally mistaken the motorcycle section from Hunt Down the Freeman as being from one of the episodes. That's a little embarrassing, but funny. I've only ever watched a Let's Play that game. I've never played it directly, so rest assured I have not suffered that much. As for where it goes in this list, that's going to be a little rough. I have Indigo Park really above Shinogi Chess Club 2. Maybe that's a bit too much. Then again, even having above Deadlock might be a little much. Indigo Park's great, don't get me wrong, but I don't know about how I feel about putting it above those. Why did I put an E in Half-Life? Do I not know how to spell half? Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut that down a little longer. Alright, there we are. I'm not sure if I should have... I'm not sure if I should have really have Half-Life 2 beneath Gnosia and Pseudoregalia. Should I put it higher? Part of me thinks I should put it higher, but at the same time, those all felt... From Gnosia to Elden Ring, those all were very special to me. Half-Life 2 is a great game, though. I don't... I'm going entirely by feeling at this point rather than anything objective, so... I'll just continue for now. Legacy of Goku. We're reaching October, and that means the time I was doing the Legacy of Goku retrospective. Alright, now this one I can actually know the music from. let's go. Alright, here we are. The Legacy of Goku. Now, these I have to do separately because each Legacy of Goku game is completely different, so I can't just go Legacy of Goku Trilogy this time. Or rather, I refuse to do that. Here we are, the Legacy of Goku. The Legacy of Goku 1 is a famously terrible game. Where Goku just will be dying to wolves in like 2 hits. It's enemies for some reason scale with your level. He doesn't as much punch as he just extends his arm a bit. The ki blasts don't feel very impactful. And the story follows Goku only, which means he misses a very good amount of stuff. So basically, by the time you reach it, you play as him in Snake Way. You come back to find everybody already dead, so you miss all that. And of course, he misses almost most of Namek since he's in the hospital and then has to take a ship for an expedited trip and arrives basically just in time for the Ginyu Force. So he never meets ones like Zarbon, Dodoria, and all that. There's a handful of nice side quests, but they're all kind of just very bare bones. You can definitely tell that... I don't believe it's ever been directly said the problem is, but my own personal speculation was that they were just given no time, budget, or both to work on it, and so they had to get something out the door where they possibly could, which is... because that was kind of the way that licensed games were often done back then, on the cheap to try and tie in with what was going on at the time, so... has a very different feel from all the others. It's still, I'm glad I showed it off, if only because, it's worth remembering, because it's one of those Legacy of Goku Trilogy 2 and 3 at least are genuinely great games in their own right. Legacy of Goku 1 is just the first... It's basically one of those trilogies where the first one is the obligatory bad one you have to suffer through before you get to the good stuff, just because they were still getting everything together. And it was very much worth it, obviously. But yeah, I can't in good faith put it here anywhere other than the bottom. And I do genuinely love the original score that they gave for Legacy of Goku 1. Legacy of Goku 1 is the only one that has a unique music entirely to itself. Everything else was, Legacy 2 and 3 both just used stuff from the English dub. Sometimes referred to as the Bruce Faulkner score. Yeah, and the song that was playing there was the song that plays when you fight Vegeta and when you fight Frieza at the end of the game. So basically the ending final boss theme for each major so basically each major arc, the final boss of each major arc. Now we get to go to the fun one, Legacy of Goku 2. Now, this is the core memory here. I replayed the crap out of this so much as a child, and apparently I didn't even learn everything, because it was only when I was streaming it that I learned that it actually uses random level-ups. And I never knew that before. I don't know how I could play that many times and not notice, but then I guess I do usually, I did usually use the stat ups on people missing them until I learned Hercule was the secret unlockable character, in which case I always save them for him like I did on stream. It just makes the grind easier for the alternate ending. Oh yeah, and even having an alternate ending was a pretty unique thing. Unfortunately, one thing I do have to admit is Legacy of Goku 2, since that's the Cell Saga, has a lot more fixed points in what people are doing. It is nice that it acknowledges the series as an ensemble cast, but it does also mean there's only so many things where you can play as whoever you want. Like, I do appreciate the boss fights against Android 20, because he's one of the very few bosses you can fight with anyone you'd like. Every other major boss requires you to fight with a specific person, so you don't get too much freedom there. And of course, Gohan isn't used very much at all, because, for better or for worse, Gohan actually isn't even in the Cell Saga very much, despite being key. He mostly just shows up at the... He has some plot-relevant stuff at the start, plot-relevant stuff at the end, and the stuff in the middle is mostly everyone else, unfortunately. So, you can accidentally fight Cell very underleveled. And I've won, I've done that before. Or, especially since it does have a minimum level to a certain degree, but, yeah. Alright, you can beat the game at a surprisingly low-level Gohan, especially since once he gets Super Saiyan 2, it's very difficult to lose. I won't say it's impossible, but they definitely meant it to be practically impossible, which is funny, because the final boss fight against Cell in Budokai 1, it was very easy to get your ass kicked. Cell kept knocking me out of Super Saiyan 2 all the time. It was awful. But meanwhile, in Legacy of Goku 2, Gohan practically can't lose unless you're trying, because the only time I've ever died against Cell as Super Saiyan 2 was intentionally locking myself into a corner so I wouldn't bounce away from Cell's attacks when he punched me. It was very hilarious. Part of me wonders if I should have showed that off, but then again, that's not exactly interesting. Plus, I'd have to go through all those cutscenes again, and you can't skip those, even if they are short. But yeah, this game is an absolute core memory for me as a child, and the big reason I wanted to avoid replaying games being mixed in with the new ones, because bluntly, I'm sorry, everything else at the top here, nothing's going to compete with it. Yeah, sorry, this game is just far too important and to my backstory to ignore. It's not, objectively speaking, it's far from the best I've played. Way far from it. I'd even say that if you wanted to experience the Dragon Ball story in an action RPG, I'd say you definitely should prioritize Kakarot these days. But it's still an essential part of my childhood that I can never forget, and there's just no hiding with it, I guess. Alrighty, next is Legacy of Goku 3. Alrighty, here we are. Legacy of Goku 3. This one I actually didn't play until years after the fact. I don't know why, but even though it's called Boo's Fury... Well, I guess I should change that properly. Yeah, even though it's called Boo's Fury, it is officially Legacy of Goku 3. They probably decided to call it that because Goku isn't actually in it as much, but because it does embrace the ensemble cast. Goku's actually in Boo's Fury more than he was in Legacy of Goku 2, where you only really control him at the tail end, hilariously. But yeah, Goku has a lot more presence in Boo's Fury, but again, they do acknowledge it as a ensemble cast. You even get some nice side stories with Goten and Trunks when they collect the Dragon Balls. Although it does, as a result, make Bulma look a lot more dumb, since she gives them the Dragon Radar. Then once you have all the Dragon Balls, she intercepts you and steals them to make a wish that the heroes know damn well, the kids know damn well is not gonna work. But like I said, it's one of those things where they finally got to add a bit more to the story, where you can play some other characters rather than just strictly following the main story. And yeah, like I said, it did have a nice 100% victory, 100% reward, where you get to play as Gogeta at any time you want, but the problem is that's 100% completion, so there's nothing to actually use Gogeta on, including any extra content. So unless you want to just beat up pirates as Gogeta, there's not much you can do with him. That's a big contrast to Legacy of Goku 2, where the 100% completion reward is play as Mr. Satan, which not only gives you the ability to play as Mr. Satan, but you get an alternate ending where you see his perspective of the ending of the Cell arc. Still, Boo's Fury having a full equipment system and all of that allows you, as well as a training boots and all that, allow you to do a lot of fun stuff with builds that you straight up can't do in the other games, and I do think that genuinely gives it a lot going for it. So, in a way, all three Legacy of Goku games basically play completely different from one another, so I could easily see one preferring 3 over 2 compared to me, for example. So yeah, I'm gonna go and put it there, I guess. You know what, maybe I'll put it above Lethal Company. Sorry, Lethal Company. Legacy of Goku trilogy, it may be part of gaming history now. Oh, and like I said, it's not even the best way to experience Dragon Ball entirely as a story, but it remains special to me, and I'm glad that I was able to share some of my childhood memories on stream like that. Because it really does mean a lot to me, and yeah, well, no and. It just really meant a lot to me, and I'm glad I was able to share it. Remnant 2. There we are, Remnant 2. Let me find, let's go with the main theme here. Here we are. Remnant 2. Remnant 1 was a genuine surprise for me because when I first started playing it with Jasper, I didn't think I'd enjoy it very much. But once we went through the Stargates, I ended up seeing all those different worlds and such. It really felt like it came into its own. It was also one of the very first Souls-likes that came out before the term was even started. They just called it Dark Souls with guns at the time. And on the higher difficulties, yeah, it really does feel that way. Remnant 2 continues that, but it does allow us a lot more customizable stuff with classes, as well as getting you into the main world walking, planeswalking stuff a lot quicker so that you can see all the unique worlds it had on offer. With the DLC, of course, each expanding on the worlds you visit. Unfortunately, I do think the ending falls a little flat. I liked what it was going for, but it just gives up all those unique worlds in exchange for just another post-apocalyptic Earth. And then the final boss is not only glitchy in the sense that it's intentionally warping you around and looking pixelated to look... it's also glitchy, period, as we found out. So, a little goofy there. Apparently I read later they actually end up having to lower some of the intensity of it because some computers straight up couldn't handle it. Wow. I do genuinely like the game, and I mean quite a bit. But, yeah. It's definitely one where my opinions started up really, really high, but kind of faltered a bit at the end. Still, even if it tripped to the finish line, I'd say the rest was still a worthwhile endeavor, especially since a lot of the new classes were really neat as well. Although I do wish the game explained itself a bit better, like, it doesn't. Oh, right. Unless you're lucky and see one of those loading screen hints that tells you about multiclassing, it's possible to play the entire game and not even realize that's a thing. I know someone who did just that. So, yeah, I needed to explain itself a bit better, too. But it's definitely a genuinely great one. Oh yeah, for the record, Remnant 2 was also the second game that contained one world that was basically about fairies having taken over Britain, and it ended poorly, as expected. The other one I played off stream, so unfortunately it's not going to be on this list, but dang. It's definitely that 2 nickels meme, except with 3, because I'm not sure or why, but I had 3. Alright, now let's edit this real quick. Now, where would I place it? Hmm. Part of me wants to still put Indigo Park above Deadlock, just because Deadlock requires friends, and like I said, it's going to be a lot less fun once the build. It became a lot less fun once the builds became locked in, and then you can't experiment nearly as much. Hmm. Yeah, I guess that's gonna have to do. Now, what's after Remnant 2? Gunfire Reborn? Yeah, that's another replay. There we are, Gunfire Reborn. I swear, every single New Set DLC has more characters more insanely overpowered than the last. Then again, with bosses like Gluttony, maybe that's justified. But this does mean that now me and Jasper are forever going to fight over that darn squirrel. But of course, he actually is a squirrel, so he's going to demand it more. I'm gonna have to pout. Still, I guess I could stick to the fox. The fox isn't nearly as overpowered as the later DLC characters, but anyone who focuses on fire is innately going to be good because fire is an overpowered element in that game. Hmm. It's nice, but it's not something like with Lethal Company. It's not one I'd really play on my own very much, so I guess we'll go there. All right, let's see what's next on my list. SAR already did that. FF14 already did that. Chapter 14. Arknights Chapter 14. Hmm. Monster Hunter Wilds beta. I'm not sure if I should count this one, since honestly that was really just there as a content test. I will be playing the full version when it comes out, but of course. Honestly, maybe I shouldn't even count this one just because it's not the full one. It's not even chapter 1 like Indigo Park. It's like then again, I guess Deadlock is on here and that's an early alpha. Then again, maybe I should take Deadlock off there rather than putting Monster Wilds on. Or maybe I can put them together. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. They're definitely a test run for what's probably going to be a much greater, for what's definitely going to be a much greater game, but I'm going to say right now it's going to qualify for the next years when it comes in because I'm definitely going to be playing it. Alright, now let's see what else is here. Oh yeah, this is where I started soloing stuff in Final Fantasy XIV. Hopefully that was entertaining. Starbound. Here we are. Starbound is yet another survival crafter, and honestly, it strikes me as very bare bones if you aren't modding it to hell and back like we were. I'm gonna be honest, if we weren't putting the shamelessly horny mods like the Vor mod on there, I probably would have asked to have changed it out by now. Well, Jasper's occasionally come to us with some more mods, which is why we had to do a reboot at one point. But, well, like I said, the mods make it a lot better. Not only that, but looking into it, it seems like the game did for some reason, the game seems to have done the, what's it called? Oh, right. Hold on. Yeah. It seems to have done the Hello Neighbor thing, where it had a genuinely great early start before. It was a pretty simple but race-specific opening where you were given a motivation to try and find out the truth behind the destruction of Earth. And eventually you'd have discovered about the creator and destroyer sort of mythology. And to be blunt, that seems a lot more engaging than the current one, where you were on Earth when it was an escape to, as it was being destroyed, and now immediately learn you are immediately lore dumped the creator and destroyer story, and then just have to find the relics accordingly. So yeah, it sounds like it's Hello Neighbor, because Hello Neighbor is, I've never played it, but I did follow several review videos, several not reviews, retrospectives on it, where apparently it had some adaptive AI where the bad guy, the neighbor, titular neighbor, would kick you out of his house and basically block whatever way you used to break in before while you try to find a missing ball. And then they rolled up their sleeves, dug in their heels, and diligently destroyed everything that made it unique by instead making it just some sort of journey to the center of the mind thing where you go through some wacky set pieces and such. It's not just regular stuff, because I remember Markiplier played through the earlier ones and talked about how he really liked it, but then later felt that just because they were kept adding more didn't mean it was becoming better, and I feel like that's probably what happened to Starbound. Especially more so now that my understanding is that Terraria. I've never played Terraria, but I've been told by people who do that it has gotten a lot more added to the lore and stuff of it, even beyond mods and I don't mean mods. I mean actual part of the base game. So yeah, the only thing Starbound has going for is the sci-fi theme in comparison, I guess. And yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's I probably shouldn't be bringing up other streamers stuff, but I need to establish how big a deal it was to show how far that fell, and so it's and how Starbound has apparently done the same. It's definitely not as bad as Outer Space, but it's about all I can say. Like I said, if it, I get we're going to be getting a good amount of content out of that between me and my team. So part of me does feel a little bad for putting it here, but at the same so low. But at the same time, if someone asked me if I was to recommend Starbound, well, again, the only reason I'm even playing is because of those mods. I would absolutely not be having anywhere near as much fun if it wasn't for the Starbound's for and weight gain mod adding some silliness to the fun. So plus, you know, the all the mods add the various species, copyrighted and not, to make things a bit more interesting. So yeah, it's definitely a game I'd say lives and dies by the mods used. With say Lethal Company, there's a lot of mods you can use, but if you just want to play vanilla Lethal Company, I'd say it's worth playing by itself, especially if you can get a full set of friends together. Starbound, I cannot say the same. Starbound, I'd say only play if you're modding it, and that's the big point of contention, I'd say. Ode to Castlevania. Bob. Oh, right before the year ended, I ended up playing a few smaller scale games. So, okay. Buffet Night, I think, was made for a game jam of some sort, so it was a very short and sweet game, but it was nice for what it was. You could definitely play through the regular way, just save the kingdom from the evil and but feel ultimately unsatisfied for not fulfilling the dream, or fulfill the dream and ruin everyone's day. Lots of fun. And by that I mean you eat them. So it was a good time all around. I feel weird rating this among others because while most of these are larger, they're also a lot more larger scale. Because I mean, hmm, like Super Animal Royale has no story or stuff. It's just pure gameplay loop. But at the same time, it's also a much larger scale because it's been constantly updated and such. It's even going to be getting that Super Animal World casual update, casual mode update of sorts, which is definitely something Slade's looking forward to. He's not a fan of the actual combat. He just likes to play as his different OCs in the game. And I can respect that. It's a pretty good game for that. But, at the same time, Buffet Night did do its job, and it does feel good to have played. But at the same time, I'm not sure how I can compare it. Like, it's obviously not going to be anywhere near Elden Ring's level, but Elden Ring also had a huge budget and stuff, so I'm not sure how I can fairly put it against the stuff. Then again, I guess one could say the same of Indigo Park, and it's on here. Hmm. Yeah, we'll put it here for now. Part of me hesitates to put it above Core Keeper and Super Animal Royale, but Core Keeper, well, if I was to play another again, it would not be Core Keeper unless it gets a huge update to make it worthwhile. So you know what? Let's do this, actually. At the very least, let's do that. I could put it below Super Animal Royale, I guess, because... Yeah, let's do that. Oh, yeah. Hey, I warned you guys I'm going to be redoing my opinion changes often. I'm not great when going off the cuff like this. I don't have to... Yeah. I did want to avoid making the list before. Part of the reason I was hesitant to add a bullet points list was because I was worried I might basically make this list before the actual stream itself, when the whole point is I need to do it on here, or so that it's not something pre-planned. But at the same time, I could probably just make some talking points as opposed to, listing them out. Well, whatever. Age of Wonders Story Realms. I genuinely liked going back to those. Halloween After Special. This was intended as my Halloween special this year, but unfortunately, I had trouble getting OBS to record it, so it ended up being delayed until 2 months later. Well, now Christmas gets to know what Halloween feels like when it gets invaded. It's a very short and sweet game that's basically entirely about, it's basically a bunch of previews and a proof of concepts for future games by the No Delivery dev. It's a genuinely fun little romp. But, where would it go, though? I wouldn't put it higher than Core Keeper, actually, so... There we are. Oh my. I don't think there's any more left, but let's check just to be sure. That's the Alo Alo Island solo stuff. Let's see here. Starbound. And yeah, that's the end of it. Alrighty, there we are. My list of games that I streamed in 2024, separated from the new games and the ones that were replay of previous ones. Some of these might I still don't. I'm still debating if I want to put Half-Life above Pseudoregalia, but at the same time, it did end on an extremely unsatisfying note. But meanwhile, Pseudoregalia had a lot. Yes, Gnosia had an extremely satisfying conclusion, and Pseudoregalia still has all that freedom of game, not just movement, but also gameplay. Like me and I'm gonna have to name drop here. Like when Damien did his playthrough, he was much more slower and methodical against the final boss. He largely worked reactively in countering their attacks. Meanwhile, I was significantly more aggressive, using the pogo bounce to jump up to where they thought they were, while they thought they were safe, and then smack them in the face. And both of them ended up winning, of course, showing just how well designed it was. Which is pretty impressive, given there's only 2 boss fights in all of Pseudoregalia. So the fact that you can handle them in a number of different ways and still succeed is a testament just how good how good the story, how good the gameplay was designed. And I guess that's all. Honestly, part of me still wants to put Kakarot above Elden Ring, but Elden Ring is a genuinely, unironically great game. At the same time, Kakarot means a lot to me, and Dragon Ball has always been very special to me. Let me see how it feels. Like I said, this list was never meant to be objective or fair, or even fair to some degree, but yeah, I'm doing. You know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna do it. Kakarot wins my game of 2024 just because it was that special for me. Maybe then again, maybe I'm being too nice to Elden Ring having it this high. After all, I played it with friends, and the big thing is we all work together. But at the same time, it did a lot of interesting new things with the lore, with the story. Yeah, and like I said, it genuinely he uh, he made me chilled with how evil Mikola was. And you know a good villain gives you a visceral reaction, right? Well, like I said, I was fully expecting to change my mind on this list even as soon as I end the stream. But for now, I think this feels like a good, pretty good list. Thanks for sticking around. Sorry I tripped over my words and messed up so much. Guess I still have a lot to work on. Alright. Well, until next time, thank you for watching. Hope you had a good time, and I'll see you later.